Hi guys, welcome back to Giant Talk, the world's first OKR podcast. Today Giant Talk is joined by Sarah Shultz, Strategy and Communications Lead at OfficeTogether. Today Sarah is going to talk to us about her experience using OKRs, from the good, the not so good and the bad. So welcome to Giant Talk, Sarah. It's great to have you with us for today's episode. Please can you start by introducing yourself to our listeners?
Yeah, sure. It's great to be here, Carly. As Carly said, my name is Sarah. I currently work for the workplace collaboration platform, OfficeTogether, and I serve as our strategy and communications lead. Prior to OfficeTogether, my background is primarily in politics on the campaign side, and I do have startup experience at Scouted and Recruiter.com, who acquired us late last year.
Thank you, and I'm sure we'll get into some examples of how you've used OKRs in those startups and OfficeTogether as well. So let's start by talking about your first involvement with OKRs. How was this, and what did you do? How did it come about?
Yeah, sure. So as you might gather, my experience with goal setting and OKRs is very much at the early stage, pre-Series A team level, which is really exciting because you're in on the ground level of helping companies reach their end goal and grow and scale. So my first experience with OKRs was with Scouted, and it had been about a year since we had last fundraised and a critical period for goal setting and revenue generation. And we introduced OKRs as a way to align the team against our company-wide objectives and help us stay hyper-focused on our goals at hand. And I was quite involved with the OKR implementation process at Scouted. One of my strengths is my ability to see big picture, but also understand underlying tasks or micro-level needs of a project. And so I think I was the right person to work alongside our CEO and our CTO to implement OKRs across the company. And we spent several weeks working through different versions and iterations, and it was really exciting to see that first iteration come to life and see how it really did rally the team around those revenue generation goals.
Yeah, and it's good how you mentioned obviously different iterations. Obviously with OKRs, it's all about testing and learning and adapting, and especially being a startup and in your growth period. So that's really interesting. Can you talk us through an experience with using OKRs being used not so well? I know we spoke before we had a discovery call before the podcast, and you mentioned that you have experience of them not being used so well as you'd have liked. So can you talk us a little bit through that?
Yeah. So in my experience, there are a few different ways that OKRs can become burdensome or messy. And so doing the exact opposite of what they're intended to do for a team or organization. And it breaks down to a few different ways. Perhaps not being data-driven, using an OKR as more of a brain dump of projects, not aligning department goals against company-wide goals, and not tracking cross-functional milestones or key results. So working across different departments to really track what you're working through together. And two examples that I can speak to personally is one, an OKR becoming more of a catch-all for a project planning or department update. And the second, not incorporating cross-functional key results in a way that we should. Happy to dive into both of those. So in terms of the OKR being used as more of a catch-all for project planning and departmental updates, at an early stage team, it can be difficult to really communicate everything that you're doing or not doing. And it's important to keep track of what's getting done. This is an example that I experienced at Scouted. I know our founder and CEO would be comfortable with me sharing this. There was often times where we would have overly communicated different projects that we're planning or different things we had on the table on our OKR slide, and not really focusing on the objective at hand, and not really paying attention to those key results. And part of what makes an OKR so good or so successful with project planning is how it keeps you just on track with what you need to get done. And so by pulling away from that and making it all messy, it detracts from it detracts from us being able to move forward. And so that's one example of the OKR not being used well. The second is in my current role at OfficeTogether. So we are on our third iteration of our OKRs right now. So in our third quarter of using them. And in the first quarter that we used OKRs, something that we didn't do particularly well was incorporate cross-functional KRs. And so, oftentimes with an early team where perhaps you have a department of 1 or 2 people, departmental efforts can feel quite siloed. And so, and it's rare that a department OKR that rolls up to a company-wide OKR won't, in some capacity, at some point in time, require support from an adjacent department. And so we've been intentional in this quarter, particularly in making sure that we're identifying those KRs that really fall under 2 different department leads or 2 different departments to make sure that we are keeping everyone accountable to what we need to do to get done.
And I think just listen to those examples and how it hasn't quite worked in one instance or another. I guess it's not a mistake. It's sort of how you rectify and how you learn from them. So I think that it sounds like you've realised the cross-functional KRs and how important that is. So that kind of leads me on to my next sort of point in terms of team leader buy-in. And I guess did you or have you experienced any difficulty with buying to OKRs from different teams, especially with those having to work sort of cross-functionally?
Yeah. So in my experience, I think the toughest department to get buy-in from is engineering and product. And often engineering, especially, again, I'm going to go back, especially at an early stage team, but really in any organization, engineering wants to be fast moving and have this level of velocity that sometimes goal tracking and KPIs can really slow down. And so it was on me as the OKR sort of implementer to help the engineering team lead understand why this was important as a broader company goal and what it would look like and how it could be helpful and not be a hindrance to the product team or engineering team's velocity. And so, yeah, I think it was helpful for me in being able to make a better case for OKRs to really help me understand and the team understand why OKRs were the right goal setting module for us at this point in time. But yeah, I think it's in terms of finding team leadership buy-in, it's about really having the confidence to make your case and understand why you're implementing OKRs in the first place. Because if you're using OKRs just because you read about them and you think they'd be a good idea, perhaps it's not the right model of goal tracking for your company at that time. But, if you're confident and you can make that case, I think other people are going to understand that and trust you and have that buy-in.
Yeah. And I think you answered my next point. So I was going to ask, how do you overcome that sort of lack of buy-in or a bit of resistance? But I think it sounds like it is just about, a huge part of it is explaining why, the reasons why you should be using OKRs, and having an OKR champion like yourself in your team to really drive forward and to motivate those. Okay, so let's talk about OKRs being used well and being used in the right way. So in your experience, what helps this process to be a successful one? So using them now where you are in OfficeTogether, how has that process been? And is there anything that you've done differently to sort of smooth the process, or is it a lot of it come down to prior experience? What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, great question. So, in terms of implementing a successful OKRs, I think it really comes down to, in my experience, in 3 things. 1, understanding what's a critical data point to track. 2, thoughtful and intentional planning. And 3, setting strong health metrics. So I'll start with thoughtful and intentional planning. So it's important to designate someone on your team, someone who's equally good about those big picture and micro observations and analysis, and have them create an initial set of company-wide OKRs and really serve as the OKR champion for your organization. And that person can work with individual departments to really refine those mid-tier objectives and make sure that they're truly aligned with the company's broader goals, whether it's for the quarter or year or month or however you're defining your period of tracking. And that way, as there's like this cohesive unit working towards those ultimate end goals and ensuring that the company can accelerate towards those goals. It'll take time and iteration, and you won't get it right on the first go around. And you have to be critical and open to change throughout the process. And so that's what I mean by thoughtful and intentional planning. In terms of getting the data right, your OKR, or more specifically your key results, are not just a smattering of data points you're tracking. These are not KPIs, and it's important not to conflate the two. Yeah. And these are separate, broader goal setting and tracking. This is a separate, broader goal setting and tracking exercise. And there are specific data points, be it leading or lagging indicators, that correctly track your success or failure of your specific goal, of your objective, that you set ahead of the month or the quarter. And so again, it's just important to ensure that you're tracking those right data points. And then in terms of health metrics, there's a few different ways you can set up your OKR tracking. And one method involves setting health metrics alongside your objective and key results. And the health metric serves as a sort of guardrail. It helps you make sure that you're working towards your objective and not getting lost in like tunnel vision as you're working towards it. For example, if your objective is to increase the number of aligned MQLs or marketing qualified leads for the quarter, your key results for tracking might be MQLs across different channels, X number from CPC, et cetera. And your health metric might be your CAC, or cost of acquisition. And because, yes, you want to bring in qualified leads that sales can close, and you want to increase that number, but you also need to pay attention to how much you're spending for each lead and what that cost to the company is, and whether or not that makes sense. So the health metric helps you stay on track and prevent failure or issues popping up in other areas of the business. Or again, touching back to cross-functional capacity. So, ensuring that you're not harming another area of the business. Where this might be business operations, for example, who, may have gotten your budget ahead of time and is expecting you to spend a set budget. Those are the three things that I think I would work through.
I think that's interesting. Obviously, the health metrics, and also you mentioned that you touched on, the differences. Not getting your KPIs and your key results mixed up, which I think a lot of people do when they first start looking into OKRs. So I think understanding the differences from the get-go, I think, will kind of help you throughout the rest of your process. And of course, as you go through your iterations, I think it will all sort of make a lot more sense the further you go along.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
I wondered whether you have, going through in your current role or your previous role at Scouted, had any external support or expertise help you along the OKR implementation process. We've spoken to various people in the past in podcasts, and various prospects and clients that we talked to at Thereby Giants that have maybe tried to implement OKRs after reading a certain book or a couple of books out there on the process and struggled, and then had to go seek expert advice. Is that something that you have reached out for?
Great question. So I did do plenty of research on my own before diving into OKRs while I was at Scouted. But I also sought out mentors and folks who had done it in the past, folks who had both succeeded and failed. We didn't use any sort of agency or consulting firm to help guide us through the OKR process. Mm-hmm. Luckily, our CTO had gone through the OKR process with startups before. And so he served as sort of like a North Star for us throughout the process internally. But yeah, it was a lot of just understanding sort of like a research project, reading through case studies and talking with experts who had, like I said, gotten it right, or had seen it not done well, and bringing those learnings into my own experience.
Yeah, I think there can be the need or the want to dive in and without doing that research. But I think it's important to, like you said, do your research. And I guess looking at your was it CTO?
Correct. Yes.
Yeah, CTO had that experience and that prior knowledge, so made the process a little bit smoother. I wondered whether I would like to end the podcast with a lasting tip or piece of advice for our listeners. So for anyone listening that might be struggling with their OKRs, maybe they're struggling to get traction or buy-in, what one tip or piece of advice would you give?
Yeah, sure. So I think I'll focus on buy-in and then with just sharing my experience again with early stage teams, just because I think that's where I can speak to best. So I've definitely been in situations where the executive team was not keen on tracking OKRs or tracking against KPIs even, and I felt it absolutely the right time to do it. And so as a department lead, I just took it upon myself to handle that goal tracking for my team and align my direct reports that I saw, to help them better understand our broader goals and objectives. And so, at the end of the day, if you can't get buy-in, doing what you can for your team is always helpful. But then, I think it's also important to make the case wherever possible. In my experience, not only working with OKRs, but also in working with early stage executives. So sometimes you need to help them, the CEO or the founder, see the bigger picture and help them understand why the seemingly time intensive or burdensome activity is actually good for their business and good for business outcomes. And the great thing about OKRs is that they are set in data. It's a strategic way to ruthlessly prioritize and ensure that everyone in the company is on the same page, working towards the same goal. And during times of turmoil or particularly tough times, so periods where OKRs might be introduced in an early team, the CEO can get lost in the weeds of the day-to-day or fixated on what's not working and usually not in a productive way. And OKRs are a great way to bring the CEO above water again and help them track what really matters. And so at the end of the day, it's just making the case that this is good for you, it's good for the business, and it's going to help us come out better on the other side.
Yeah, I think it's a good tip, and I think the buy-in, the issue of internal buy-in is something that we hear quite often. It's a struggle, and I think it's important to make that case. And I think having an OKR champion in the organisation is a strong place to be able to obviously champion OKRs and try and get buy-in at all levels and across the leadership team. So thank you for being a great guest on Giant Talk. It's good to hear real examples from people that have gone through good, the bad, and the ugly. I'm going to say, and has that experience. And it's been great to talk to you today. So thank you.
No, thank you so much, Carly.
And to you, our listeners, as always, if you have any feedback or if you'd like to get in touch with us at Giant Talk, you can email growth@therebegiant.com. And I'll see you again for another episode of Giant Talk.